Alright, so this is going to be a little tips and tricks video on how you can make your own boss fights. This is going to be exclusively for Bedrock Edition, and I won't necessarily be showing you exactly how to make any of my boss fights exactly. I do have a world download for my most recent one in the description. I think that is a pretty decent application of all the stuff I'm going to talk about in today's video. If you still don't understand it, I'm probably just going to make a tutorial for Korreos anyway in the future, so you can look forward to that, as long as it, of course, doesn't take like 9 years like this one did. But anyway, let's just get into the video. So I thought I'd warn you just before we start that this video does get very complicated at times. So if you're not as experienced with command blocks, things just may start not making any sense after a while. Anyway, let's get on to the tips. Okay, so the first thing we're going to get into is the playanimation command, which at first doesn't seem like there's much to talk about, but there's actually a lot that I didn't know until the playanimation command just broke at some point, and then I had to fix everything. And I'll get into that in a second, because that probably just sounds like nonsense. But I'm just gonna demonstrate how the playanimation command is usually done. So most people just go play that you can spell, of course. E name is the name of your boss, so I'll just put Elner here. And then you put the animation string, which for me could just be an armor stand animation. Let's go over post pose, because that one is quite common. And then you just have a random string of characters. I usually just put a random string of 3 characters, and then you just put your fade out time, and then that's that. And it will usually just look like this. It'll just play for a little bit, it'll just play first 1 second, it'll fade out with after 1 second. What you can usually do is you can also, if you want to make this like a animation that plays on repeat, you can just you can increase the fade out time, and then change the command block to a repeat command block, and then boom. But you might notice that her arms are shaking periodically. Oh, Jesus Christ. I think I made a mistake using that animation. Yeah, you notice that periodically her arms shake, but it's on a cycle. Sometimes they shake like crazy like that, and then they calm down after a little bit. So let me just show you something. The problem... Oh my god. Okay, so the problem lies in the idle animation. You see that? How the arms just move up and down? Unfortunately, the playanimation command, and in this form, all it does is it just basically plays the animation by moving the limbs from their current position, rather than just moving it to a fixed position, like forcing it into a fixed position like it used to. So it used to just kind of force it to only exclusively stay in this pose permanently, independent of where the mob's limbs were at a given time. But now that doesn't really happen anymore. I'm just gonna do that just so that, yeah, like that, there we go. So the way you fix that is you actually need to add more placeholder commands or values. The thing is, you do need to make sure all of these are exactly the same. Like if you use a whole bunch of different ones within the same boss fight, for example, it will stop working. So what I'm just doing is I'm just putting literally 3, like 2 extra ones over here, and then replacing this one with one of the same string of characters. And then now, if I just put this on an impulse, now look what happens. So yeah, they are just completely stuck in that position. Even if I hit her, she will still be stuck in that position. Which, obviously the same can't be said if I were to just completely remove those. Well, but the thing is, obviously, if I were to just do that now, if I were to just try to remove it, the issue comes in the fact that you can't really do anything about this with just one of these regular playanimation commands. Okay, so the problem is getting their position back to the way you want it. So they're just going to stay like this permanently, even if I go into survival. And even if it hit me, it'll still do that. So obviously that's not something you'll want. So you'll need to reset it. And the way you reset it is you simply play an animation string that doesn't work with the mob's limbs, but is a valid string that actually does something with a command normally. So say I instead just put animation peglin celebrate hunt. So that will work on a piglin. It'll just make their ears wag a little bit. It's kind of cute, but it does nothing for Eleanor, a skeleton, because, well, she doesn't have the ears. So what'll happen is with the fade out time, she will basically just reset because none of her limbs are actually needing to move for that animation to work. I don't know if any of this is making any sense, but that's basically how you toggle it. And if you want an instant toggle, of course, you need to just remove this value entirely. You can just basically make it 0, and then you can revert this to another pose. So I guess I can just recycle this one, make sure all the placeholder values are the same. Yep. Oh, that looked really cool, actually, the way she turned while doing that. That was kind of lucky. Then, so that will stay like that permanently. So now that will just do that, and you have yourself a resetting animation. And this also works in survival, because the thing is, actually, let me just switch back temporarily. The problem with this is if you were to not use these, and you were to just, yeah, so notice how her arms are straight up. That is a problem, because now if I were to do the hero pose, maybe if I first set this to a repeating command block, it would actually, you know, stay on. There. So now it looks, now look what happens. Yeah, it's kind of a disaster. Yeah, I don't want to look at this anymore, and I think I've made my point, so I'm just gonna move on. Okay, so I thought I'd quickly show you a little thing with Korreos, because, well, if you're going to use a piglin for the boss, as you can tell, this animation here will not really work entirely to cancel out any other animations that you do. So if I were to do this, and he's just completely stuck there, his ears are moving because obviously the animation isn't using his ears, so they're just left, like, alone. But if I were to use this to cancel it, it does work for the rest of his body. Like, the rest of his body moves just fine. And he can hit me the same way. I know his weapons are switched. That was for a thumbnail. Leave me alone. But here's the thing. Obviously, there is an animation that is completely universal that should work for any mob to cancel out the animation. So if I just do play animation at e name equals Korreos, or the name of your boss, and then you just do this. I don't know if this is going to be correct, but I think it's something like trident third person field, and then your animation, your null strings, I guess. We'll just call them that, because they don't need to be anything in particular. Okay, so now if I just press this button here, that's not a valid string. Yeah, that is where this website, this particular page here, would be very useful. This will basically list every single animation string that can exist within the game. Not all of these will work. In fact, not too many of these will work. Pretty sure absolutely none of these ones work. None of these work for sure. But the one I'm looking for is this one, because I don't really know what this is supposed to even do, so I'll just copy and paste this, and then I will just put it into here. Is it really that much different from what I typed originally? I was close, to be honest. But anyway, with that string, if I press the button now it will cancel, and he's completely back to normal. So now even if he tries to hit me, everything he does is completely back to normal. So that's pretty much play animation covered. So next is the execute command, which I'm pretty sure you've all heard of. It is insanely useful, and I'm just going to demonstrate some of the ways that I've used it in the past. What you're going to just do is we're just going to do a little bit of a particle command. So what it can do is /execute at E. Now note that the syntax has changed for Bedrock Edition. It's now going to use basically the exact same syntax as Java Edition, which does make it a hell of a lot more versatile. Run article. Yeah, no, you don't need to specify the tildes before the command even starts anymore. That doesn't make any sense. I don't think what I said made any sense either. Article. Let's do large explosion, because pretty sure that's like the one I remember the most. Or actually, no. Again, there's something on the Minecraft wiki on all the animation strings, the particle strings. So now if I just press the button here, nice. Pretty sure those are all meant to be underscores. Absolutely certain those are all meant to be underscores. Much better. That's much better. And even if she is like, I don't know, way over here or something, it will still execute the command at her. And even while it'll even execute it while she's running or anything like that. I'm pretty sure you've all seen this before. Don't mind the carnage in the background there. But it is incredibly useful, and I've used this command basically all the time. It's basically a fundamental requirement for me. So another use we have for it, of course, it's probably one of the more common ones, is if you want to summon minions with the boss as well. Yeah, so you basically will just do the first part exactly the same way, then instead you'll just do run summon, let's just summon stray here, and then if I just do that, it will summon a minion. That is burning, of course, because it doesn't have a helmet, but you get the point. And another use that is, I would say, quite common, other than summoning minions that appear to do virtually nothing at the moment. Another use that's quite common is to create effects, so within a certain radius, and that's something I did for Korreos. So what you do is, instead of executing at Elner, you execute at the player. If entity Elner is within a radius of 3 blocks, run effect at P, poison, let's just do, no, I was about to write what I usually do for an infinite effect. That's not how you do it. True or false if you want. I'm pretty sure you know what that does, but true or false, that just hides the particle effects, but if I put false, it will keep them. That should probably be a repeating command block. Okay, so now if I go close to her, absolutely nothing will happen. I think to make this a lot easier, we will just switch it back. We'll execute at Elner instead. There, now let's see what happens. So if I get too close to her, why is Minecraft like that? It literally just started working now that I turned off and on the lever. Now it's applying poison. There. The poison doesn't even do anything. Oh my god. Okay, let me just, oh, okay, the poison's doing something now. Why is it doing something now? Anyway, that's pretty much the execute command, and it can really be, and where things really start to get interesting is when you start to use it with the next command that I have in line. Okay, so this next tip isn't necessarily a command in itself. In fact, most of the rest of the tips in this video are not really going to be directly just commands, but it's still insanely versatile and useful nonetheless. So it basically revolves around this. What is that symbol actually called? Because I know that's what it's used for. It's not actually called a caret, is it? Oh, caret. That's literally the third word that's pronounced and spelled similarly to the actual caret. God, English sucks. Okay, so we're gonna actually use that symbol. And the way we can do that is, I mean, usually with boss fights, it's not really as common to use it on the mob itself, but you can basically make like a dash with it. And that's what I've seen a lot of people do with it, which it is pretty cool. I should probably do that. Use 3 of those, and basically what these will do is, instead of just executing at your position, like independent of where you're facing, this will actually execute from the blocks that you're facing rather than just your position. If I were to do this, it would basically just be teleport Elner forward from where they're facing. This last one means in front or behind, so if I put a negative, she'll teleport to the blocks behind herself and go backwards. And then if I do this, she will teleport to her right and then to her left, I believe, or it might be vice versa, I'm not sure. This basically works the same way, so that's not really too much to worry about. In fact, I wouldn't really mess with this because then it kind of starts to get a little janky. But if you just did this on a repeat, and then you powered it with like a really short pulse, she will just not do anything. Oh, I put type IM. So now if I just power this with a short pulse, see that? She just starts speeding off into where... Look at that. And you can even make stuff like that. But what you can do to make this more interesting, if you want the dash to home in on you, you can obviously put facing at P, and then now she will just... And now I can't get rid of the torch. Yeah, so don't do that. But yeah, that's basically a use for it, and then... But instead, I think I have something a lot more interesting, because that's really as much as you can use it for just while you're using it on a mob. But you can use this for some truly insane things, as I will explain in the next clip. Alright, so the next idea I want to demonstrate is basically using armor stands as a point of reference for commands. I know that genuinely just doesn't make any sense when I just say it off the fly, but it's kind of an abstract idea that really starts to open a lot of possibilities when you start exploring it. So what you can use this for is usually for projectiles or actually manipulating particles. Particles in Java, you can actually just move them with the commands themselves, but on Bedrock you can't really do that. But you can use armor stands to trace the path for those particles to travel. I'm basically just going to kind of make a string of commands on the fly, and I'll see if I can just lay out my thought process. So I first want to make it so the position armor stand way out here will travel towards the origin. So what I can do for that is I can execute at the position armor stand, and then I can teleport it at a rate of 1 block per tick ahead of itself. I probably should have stated what that meant before, and I don't understand why I didn't, but I guess I just forgot how to make tutorials. So that's what that represents. This means 1 block, and since this is activating every tick, it's basically 1 block per tick. Although I would say that's maybe a bit fast, so I can reduce the speed if I would like to, let's go 0.6. That's usually the sweet spot for me. But then you have to make it face the origin armor stand, because of course you want it to teleport towards the origin. So with that, I don't know what you guys are expecting from me at this point. Null? There's not an entity there. I forgot to put a selector for the teleport. Much better. So then what you can do to put on top of that, let me just move the origin to a better spot. That looks good. And then I can add another command here You know how this part works, I'm assuming, because I also showed how to use a particle command at a mob's position. I keep forgetting that. So let's go with here, although this will actually, the thing is with the tilde y, it actually executes at your feet. So if you want to execute at head level or waist level, you can put it a block above, because it will basically just be, as opposed to down here, it'll be more like up here. So now if I just did this, there you go. So now you have a traveling particle effect. And to demonstrate that a little better, not give it to them, you idiot. Just throw it to them. Throw it to them. It will disappear. I will take that. I keep forgetting how armor stands work. Thank you very much. It would be useful to know which one is which before I did that. Okay. And now I just... Please stop that. Yeah, I know the particle trails might ruin the entire point of this, but I guess it is kind of useful because at least you know where they are, and you kind of can see how it works. So now if I do that, you just have an invisible particle trail. And that is actually precisely how I did the little combustion trail ignite thing attack with Elner. Yes, I don't name my attacks, actually. I usually don't. So that's how you can basically send a particle across and manipulate it as you will. What I think, I've learned something on the internet that is insanely cool and is actually a pretty good application on how you can manipulate armor stand positions to create some really, really cool effects. I'm going to basically make an armor stand orbit another one. So I want the position stand to orbit around... Why are you not naming it? Oh god, autosave. So I'm going to be naming this, so I want the position one to orbit around the origin. I can start by basically making this armor stand spin in place. So you can execute, of course, at the armor stand, and then you can set it to never change, man, never change. So you can teleport that armor stand at... Why is my shift key not working? Obviously, if you're trying to teleport something to itself, always make sure it is the 3 tildes, because if you do this, it will just send it up. If you change any of these values, it will just send it traveling off in a certain direction, and it won't be dependent on where it's facing, like the other caret. Also, add an extra tilde, which manipulates its rotation, so I can put, let's go with 20, I don't know what unit that is, you make it that what you will. So that will basically just make it rotate. Of course not, because I'm the one making the command. Did I actually forget to put TP? Right, so that will make it rotate, which is pretty cool. Now what you can do with this, I'm actually just gonna set something up here. I'm basically kind of gonna make a sword spin around this armor stand. So the idea behind an armor stand orbiting another one is you want it to basically trace a path around it by always putting it in a certain position in front of the armor stand that is dependent on where the armor stand is facing. So obviously if you were to just teleport an armor stand, say tilde 3, it would always just end up here. It's a static point, it's not dependent of where it's facing. In contrast, if you were to use the origin armor stand as a center of rotation, so the idea is you want it to always teleport in some way, always in front of it or to the side of it. Either of those will work, although I just think teleporting the armor stand in front of where it's facing is much easier to understand. So now that will effectively make, of course I add that as a separate command. So if I add this, make sure this is added, this is the thing that makes the armor stand spin. And then you can chain this, don't make it conditional, we'll talk about that later, and make sure that's always on. You can make it orbit, like that, but that looks incredibly stupid, and we want the sword to rotate as if it's actually, kind of swinging in a circle like this. So what you can do, why do I keep saying that phrase? You can actually teleport it in front of where the origin is facing, but facing a bit further out of the origin, since you actually want it to always, you want this armor stand to always be facing outwards of where it's orbiting, so it'll basically start doing this, so it's always tracing a circle facing away from the origin armor stand. So now what that creates is a really cool motion like that, but of course, since the sword is facing the side, it still kind of looks dumb, so we're gonna instead make it face the side of the armor stand, like so, and then now you actually have effectively a spinning sword. Tell me that doesn't look awesome. Seriously, tell me that doesn't look actually insane. So yeah, I think that is all I wanted to cover for how you can use armor stands as a little hack, dare I say, for tracing out a motion with a projectile or a particle or something like that, or even using them as a point of reference. Because you can even do the opposite of the first point that I mentioned, and maybe you want to send, I don't know, maybe you want to place an armor stand at a position where the boss mob is at right now, but then say the armor stand is here, but then the boss mob is over here, but you still want the projectile to be sent from that position there. You can do that. You can just send it from that position, teleport it so it's always facing you, and then you can do whatever you want with that. And of course, I can elaborate on what kind of effects and what kind of extra attributes you can add to a projectile to actually make it into a working projectile. I'll explain that properly in this next tip. Conditional and chained command blocks, which sounds extremely specific, but trust me, it is so much more useful than you can ever imagine. Now the thing is with command blocks on Bedrock Edition, you can actually incorporate a delay onto them. So what you can do is you can basically just make dialog boxes very, very simply by just adding delays onto the chain command block rather than having to do that with repeaters like you would on Java Edition or something like that. And I think there's another technique for doing that on Java Edition, but I wouldn't know because I just don't play it enough. But if I were to just do, say, I don't know. Yeah, let's just do that. I'm just coming up with it. Okay, don't mind this dialogue, I'm just coming up with it on the fly. Cut me some slack. It doesn't even have anything to do with the character, but you know what? It's a thing that I can now use to demonstrate the power of delayed command blocks. So see that? You notice how that was very delayed? It was this right here. And I didn't have to lay out a whole ton of repeaters, like, you know, like this. And it's 20 ticks. Yeah, that's 20 ticks. So if I just make this 40, because this is game ticks, not redstone ticks, so a game tick is 2 redstone ticks. I mean, the other way around. If I were to just do that, if I were to turn this into an impulse block, I'm just basically demonstrating on how they basically will power at the same exact time. That's why it's always active. So if I do this, they should basically power at the exact same time. Alright, Bedrock's acting weird again. Alright, so you get the point. I mean, this is not really that important anymore because it's just for one use. Okay, so on to chained conditional command blocks then. So I want to basically send a projectile from this position, so we'll just call it position. I'll send it from wherever it is. As I explained earlier, you could even just teleport it from this armor stand, so imagine this is actually a working point of reference. You can teleport it from there to where I am over here. I can like send it flying towards me and it can explode on me. So that's what I want it to do. I want it to send it from that position to me, and then it explodes once it hits me. So what I can do first, why do I keep starting every single sentence with that? So I can just execute at the position stand, and then set it to TP itself position, and I can teleport it towards the nearest player, or sorry, facing the nearest player. Let's go with 0.7 blocks per tick ahead of itself. Now what I can do, I can just test that out first just to make sure it works, because I know how I am. Okay, so that works. Reset, there we go. So what I can do is now I can add a command that always is now testing from the armor stand's position to check if there's a player nearby. So I could do execute at the position. I keep forgetting to put name because I don't want to read out the commands, because like it doesn't really do anything. It just sounds like I'm commenting for the sake of commenting, or just, you know, not explaining things in English. So then I can do if entity at p is, so basically in English, I don't know why I just went back to just reading it, entity of type player, let's go with that, is within a radius of 1 block, let's go with that. So it now will always be testing, as it teleports to me, it will always be testing if a player, me, is within a block of its radius. And if it is successful, this conditional command block will deal damage to me. So conditional command blocks will not activate unless the previous command was successful. So I can just do a damage command. I don't remember how it's formatted, but let's just go 10 heart, or 10, which is basically 5 hearts, and then let's make the cause entity attack. Let's go with Elner so we can demonstrate how that works as well, because what's useful is now it's basically going to detect Elner as the source of my damage, so it'll knock me back away from Elner, so it looks like she attacked me. Of course, I kind of need to add IE. What do you mean? Do I not remember how this attack works? That always trips me out. Even with the replace item command, when you have to put place item entity, that always trips me out. I keep forgetting that. So don't be like me. Here's a little useful tip. If you want to check if you did a command properly and you're not entirely sure if you did, what you do is you click off previous output, you leave, and then you go back in. You turn on previous output, you leave again, and then you go back in. And if this is empty, you did the command correctly. If not, it'll show you a syntax error showing where it is, stuff like that. So it'll basically just damage me, and then I can maybe take it a step further and add a particle. So obviously I should be executing it at the position armor stand, and also the incompetence to just put at E, run particle just at the position, but then before that you put the name of the particle for some reason. Let's put huge explosion emitter. So that's just an explosion, like a big explosion, like a TNT explosion. And then afterwards, just so that damage isn't just spammed on you, you want to make sure as soon as this command is successful, all of these will execute at the exact same time. They will all execute on the same tick. So with that, but it'll also, the interesting thing is it will always do them in an ordered sequence. So so you want to make sure to get rid of the armor stand or entity as the last command in the chain, because obviously if you kill it before the end of the chain, obviously the rest of the commands will no longer continue to work, because, well, the point of reference doesn't exist. So now if I press this with a whole lot of faith, I also need to be in survival, because the thing is, it needs to damage me. You can't damage players in creative mode. And if this doesn't work, then this doesn't work, then this doesn't work, and then the whole thing just goes into a really messy infinite loop. So if I just go to survival mode, if I do that, Perfect. Wow, that actually worked first try. That is very surprising. But yeah, that is basically, I would say, a direct application of chained commands or conditional commands in Minecraft. Please work. Okay. So now, I will probably I can just do this from here because this will probably make a bit more sense. So yeah, notice how I'm being knocked back. It's in the direction of Elner, not the armor stand. And you can probably rewatch the previous time I got hit just so you can look at that again. So yeah, that's basically all my tips. So now I guess it's time for another application of it all. So this attack works by sending armor stands from one end of the arena to the other, and this happens in 3 increments. So while they move across, a separate command executes at each of their positions that fills an area from the armor stand's position to the side opposite of the armor stand, which in this case, as shown, would be 19 blocks to their left. This command runs every single tick, which allows the entire area that the armor stand covers to be completely filled in a gradual motion. So they essentially just sweep the entire area, fill it, and then the next one comes in, sweeps the area, fills it, and then the last one basically just clears all the blocks in the same exact way. The armor stands all move forward at a rate of 1 block every 2 ticks, just so that the execute command that places the blocks can actually keep up so that it doesn't miss any blocks. And all the events that occur within the command, like the armor stands being removed and then replaced with other ones, and then even orienting the armor stands so that the armor stands actually move along the right path, because the commands that teleport them ahead of themselves don't care where they're facing. The commands just teleport them ahead of where they're facing regardless. So something pretty cool about repeating and chain command blocks that I completely forgot to mention is you can actually use them in a delayed fashion. So like, if say you want something to execute every single tick, right? So you can just put a repeating command block that doesn't do anything and put a chain command block above it with a certain delay. You can make this as long as you want, and instead of doing what a repeat command block does on a delay where it just actually executes at a slower rate, it doesn't execute as often, say every minute. You can have something that executes at the same rate. It still activates every tick, but it just activates 11 ticks after the command block is powered. So it's basically a delayed repeating command block that can actually act at the same rate, just much later. Oh, and also I used a conditional command block here to only play the glass sound whenever this block placing command is successful, just so that it doesn't keep playing the glass sound after or before the glass actually stops being broken. I don't know if this made even remotely any sense, but hopefully you got something out of that. Alright, so that's basically all the tips and tricks I have for you, and hopefully this video made even a trace of sense, and hopefully this did actually give you some ideas and inspiration and also some knowledge on how you can make your own boss fights. And yeah, that's pretty much all I've got time for right now, and I will see you in the next one. Hopefully that doesn't mean 9 years from now. Thank you all very much for sticking with me till the end. I'll see you next time.